Ever wonder what sets the winners apart from the losers? And what does it really take to be a winner? My name is Federico, and I'm a young, successful entrepreneur passionate about sports, real estate, mindset, and business. If you are just like me, then the Winning Ways podcast is meant for you.
Yo, welcome back to Winning Ways with Fred. My name is Federico, and I am your host. Guys, very big show today. We have somebody that started basically selling apparel out of the trunk of his car and created a company that's very successful now and doing really well. And I'm excited to interview him and talk with him and help you guys and provide value to you guys. But first and foremost, as always, guys, if you do find value in the show, please share it. If you find it funny or if you think somebody else will find value, which today you will, please share it. I will not run ads in this show. I find that annoying when I listen to a podcast and I have three ads in between them. So I don't do that and I won't do that. Now, without further ado, Jake Thompson, how are you, man?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Yeah, man. Thank you for coming. Lots to talk about. And we're going to start off by your company, Compete Every Day, and how you started it off. Tell us that story, man, because to me, it's awesome to hear that you started selling shirts out of the trunk of your car. And 10, 11 years later, look where you are.
Yeah, never would have imagined it. So I thought I wanted to be the next Jerry Maguire. Like I grew up thinking I was going to be a sports agent, and that's the route. I sent letters to every sports agent I could find, football specifically. I had a ton of rejection, had one guy reach out and say, hey, I'll give you an internship if you want to do essentially grunt work. So I spent the end of college, pursued my master's, interning and working at this agency, and decided kind of toward the end of I was finishing grad school, that's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It wasn't what I thought it was. Like a lot of us, we love the hot dog, but once you get in and see how the hot dog's made, you don't necessarily know if you like the hot dog anymore. And so for me, getting into it, I was realizing I was losing some of the love of sports. And it also I didn't think that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Well, flashback then, for me, that was 2008. It was a recession. It's kind of like what we're going through now. I hear, and everybody's kind of unsure of what's going to happen. And so for me at that time, I have a very non-traditional work experience. I'd worked at an agency, I'd interned and worked with the Dallas Cowboys and an arena football team. And I had this really weird work experience. I had an M.B.A. in sports business. And so I just didn't fit in a box. And so I couldn't get a job. I laughed that I couldn't even get like a holiday hours job helping at like Best Buy because I didn't fit in that corporate box. Yeah. And so that forced me to pivot. And what I started doing was consulting, just basic marketing strategy, reaching out to anyone in my network. Hey, can I help you with graphic design, which I'd kind of taught myself, basic social media. I can build you a website on WordPress. By reskinning templates. And so I just kind of started teaching myself skills that businesses needed, and that took off. Did it for a few years, but was incredibly unfulfilled with the work I did. It's the idea that I was making good money. I was having fun in my 20s going out. I was chasing girls. We'd go to the bars. I was getting new cars, but something was missing in terms of a fulfillment and purpose in my work. And that really sent me down a path of exploring, if I died tomorrow, what would I leave behind? And I realized like nothing. Like I don't have kids. I don't have family. I've done nothing in terms of work to build something bigger than myself. No. And I likened it to a sandcastle. I was building an epic sandcastle on the beach. And what happens when the tide comes in? You never knew the sandcastle was there. Yeah. And I said, I don't want to be that. Let that be me. I want to leave a mark. So I started toying with this idea of what would life look like if someone showed up every single day and strove to reach their full potential. If you woke up with the attitude of not just, hey, how do I get through the day or let me go through the motions, but we woke up every day and said, how am I going to be better than I was the day before? And then take action on it. Yeah. And from that, I chewed on it for like 6-7 months. Eventually, this idea of competing every day came out. Then from there, it was another 6, 7, 8 months of just trying to figure out, what do I want to do with this? I tried all sorts of projects of where I was going to fit this brand message that just didn't work. Yeah. Finally, as we were laughing off air, my best friend, roommate at the time, was like, hey, you should look at t-shirts. He said, there's a company out of Boston, started in the 80s. They do 120 million a year. And their slogan is literally life is good. And he said, it's kind of funny, but their logo is a stick figure that they've named Jake. So he's like, why not give it a shot? Yeah. And so I'd set aside money for for a guy's trip that we ended up not taking. And I put it into a couple of boxes of shirts and tanks. I had Compete Every Day printed on the chest. No idea what I was doing. It was just like, let's figure it out. And so that was May of 2011, selling them out of the back of the car behind a CrossFit gym in Dallas to friends, to people at coffee shops, to anywhere I could go. And as I started seeing people respond when they're like, I don't compete with people. I'm like, do you compete with yourself? Do you wake up every day and say, how am I going to get better today? Or do you just go through the motions?
Yeah.
And when you started having those conversations, you started to hear people of like, oh, I'm competing to create a better life for my kids than I had. I'm competing to build this project or build this company because I want to give people jobs. I want to empower people. And so once you started hearing all these different things that people competed for,
Yeah.
everything started to really roll. And so that was, midway through 2011 when we launched. And obviously the brand looks dramatically different today, but it still goes back to the core principle of how are we helping people build that competitive mindset and start striving for their full potential, because the opposite, going through the motions, taking life as it comes to you, being passive, leaves you with a giant bag of regret at the end.
Yeah.
And you would rather be empty and exhausted with some wins, with some failures, with the fact that you went after everything to be your best, rather than have a full tank on your deathbed and realize I never went after anything that I really wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot to touch upon, right? And one thing I want to touch here is you didn't have the criteria to get a traditional job. You started doing your own thing, building WordPress, all this stuff. You were making good money, you said, but it wasn't fulfilling you, right? And it's a different mindset that it takes for you to jump to be like, okay, I'm making good money here, but I'm gonna pivot to something that it's a risk. I don't know if it's gonna make me money, but it's gonna fulfill me and help others, right?
Yeah, huge risk, but I did it from a standpoint of I kept my consulting.
Yeah.
But what I did is I dialed back my hours and said, what's the bare minimum I need to cover my overhead? Give me a little bit of money in case I need it for a rainy day, and then put every other waking hour into building this brand.
Yeah.
And so instead of trying to say, how much money can I make? I started saying, what's the bare minimum I need to make? Let me not take any other project, sell any other hours beyond that. And then let me put every outside energy and hours into this. So I did that for the first couple of years until Compete got to a point where I was earning take home more than I ever would have consulting. And then I was able to shut that off entirely and say, okay, now we've got that distraction done. Let's keep building the team and reinvesting in the company. But a lot of us sometimes have the idea that you got to burn the boats from the get-go. And there was probably a time in my life where I thought, oh yeah, you got to do that. The older I've gotten and the more I've advised people, as I did the other day after a gig, if you have a strong, steady job, which consulting is not really the steady, but if you have strong, steady, do that. Build your side hustle on the side until you get to a point where you're earning more on that side hustle than you are your day job. Then you can leave. But the real goal, as I told them, is build you a 6-month runway. Figure out, hey, I got to make $6K a month to cover my just basics. Okay, cool. So 6 times 6, you need $36K in the bank you've earned from your side hustle, which hopefully by that point you're earning more on your side hustle than your daytime job. But if you're not, you've got your rainy day fund. Build the side hustle up, then jump. It's a slower process. It's a longer process. But the opposite is you make the jump too quick. Then you start taking on tons more debt. You start adding a ton more pressure. You're not able to perform, to create, because you're so tight with stress and worry. So how do you get yourself to perform optimally? You put yourself in a position to have that runway.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I totally agree with you. I mean, a lot of people do say that. Tony Robbins is the primary guy to say that. It's like, burn the boats and you're going to figure it out. There's no other way. Have only one option. That's the best way to go about it. But I totally agree with you. Now, my question was more referring to that fork on the road. When did that happen? What experience or what had happened for you? Because if you're making good money, right? Obviously, you're looking to help others, but what I meant was like, it takes a different type of mindset to leave that money, leave that comfort that you're doing well already, to take that risk to help others. Where was that?
So there's a book by a guy named Donald Miller called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. And it talks about, from a core principle, the story we live and how most of us get tricked into this idea of life of, for instance, if you and I go to a movie and the movie is, hey, this guy wants a BMW, goes to his job, works his 9 to 5, saves his money, buys his BMW, drives off. Like, that's a crappy movie. Like, we probably wouldn't even sit into at the end because we're like, this is pretty boring. Miller argues that great stories, books, movies, literature, anything, they all have a character who steps into conflict, who has a purpose bigger than themselves, and brings others alongside them. And he argues that great stories have that, and so do great lives. And he looks at like characters in history that we look up to and admire, and he talks about how they pulled these pieces. And his goal ties into Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, that to have that purpose, that pursuit is so incredibly important. And once you do that, it starts to change how you show up. So I remember reading that book. I remember evaluating what I was doing week in, week out, already feeling like, is this it? You know, ooh, I get another paycheck, and it gets you high for a minute. And then you're like, okay, is that it?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of that temporary boost. And,
Yeah.
and I was missing the more fulfillment in life, as well as like, when I die, is there any mark that I'm going to be here? And so for me, you know, I grew up, my dad owned a couple of small gas stations in our East Texas town. So I saw like what it looked like to be a small business owner up close and personal. I saw the opportunities he had to come to my little league baseball games or football games. And so I knew deep down part of me wanted that from an ownership standpoint. I just didn't know how.
Yeah.
And this, reading that book, being at that point of making good money and realizing that was not fulfilling my soul, that was not giving me that challenge to take on, this is where I started to see the light go off in people. And ultimately, when you start seeing other people strive to be great instead of settle for what's comfortable, they start to build their confidence. And there's nothing more motivating and empowering when you can talk to somebody, you start to see the shift in their eyes and their mindset. And so as I talked to people about this message, you would see more and more people respond. And as they responded, that's more and more indication to me, hell yeah, this is the way I got to go. This is what I got to do, because I'm seeing it. And I know firsthand what it's like to say, I'm scared, I'm uncomfortable, there's a pit in my stomach, I don't know if this is right. And you walk away from an opportunity you regret. And so what I was just truly committed on is how to make sure people don't get stuck with the bag of regret, even if they fail pursuing something, giving them the confidence to know, I'd rather go after it and it not work out and know that, you know what, I gave it my best shot, than to keep asking myself for the rest of my life, what if I had gone after it? And so for me, that it was kind of those combination of things of where I was. I mean, the consulting was, I had no other choice. I had to pay the bills. So I started doing it. I had good luck with it, but it wasn't the golden handcuffs that a lot of time you get locked into sometimes with jobs. At the same time, it's the importance of playing the 10 to 20 year game instead of the 10 to 20 day or 10 to 20 minute game. How do you play that long game of what do I want my life to look like? Where do I want to be 10, 20 years from now, instead of, oh, what's the easiest right now?
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like Tony says, people underestimate what they could do in 10 years and overestimate what they can do in 1 year. And it's funny. I was talking to Damian Lupo. I don't know if you know who he is. He was in the podcast earlier, and he specifically touched on that. He was like, young men are very impatient. They think they're gonna love the business, the $1 million, the billionaire status, the Ferrari, everything within a year, and that's just not how it goes. And I feel like it's just society nowadays has kind of made us like that.
This little device here, social media, like we see other people's wins.
Yeah.
And what we don't see is what goes into it. We see the Super Bowl championships, which tonight kicks off the NFL. We see the wins. We see the guys. We don't see the hours and hours and hours they spend watching film, running bleachers by themselves, training, passing up parties. Like, we don't see that. I'm actually wearing one of our shirts today that just dropped. It just says "Own the Shadows," because it's all about the work you do when no one's watching that prepares you to shine when everyone is. And that is the problem with most of our society today, is we're impatient and we're focused on outcomes instead of what it takes to create outcomes.
Yeah. No, that's great, man. And I'm a big believer in habits and routines, especially morning routines. I don't think one size fits all. You could do it either way, at night, in the afternoon. I'm a morning guy. I like waking up early, but that starts my day off great. I feel like I'm training like a sports athlete to compete. Yeah, compete every day, like your business, right? Let's touch on that for a bit. What are some of your habits that help you compete every day and stay in peak state?
Yeah, so I wanna piggyback or echo what you said about it can look different for everybody. Instagram, there was a viral post on Instagram not too long ago about Mark Wahlberg, Marky Mark's morning routine that started at like 3:30 or 4 in the morning, and But you look at that, and if you shift that 3 hours, he gets up at 7:30, but he does the same thing, he's still going to have an incredibly successful day. So it's less about what time you get up and then what do you do. So for me, it's not rolling right out of bed, going straight to work. I'm up, usually for me, I'm up about 5:15. I go in, I make either a cup of coffee or some pre-workout. I do a little reading. I jot through what I'm focused on today. What are my 3 priorities I've got to get done today? Not my to-do list.
Yeah.
What are the 3 biggest action items I got to have? Then I work out. If it's a rest day, I'm going to go outside on a long walk. I'm going to do some mobility. I'm going to move, get blood flow going, either in a class, in my garage gym, or just out walking to kind of clear the head.
Yeah.
Then I usually come back in, I shower, I throw on clothes. I used to just kind of work out or work at the house sometimes in like workout clothes. And what I found is it doesn't put me in the right state of mind sometimes when I've got to really get after the day as like getting ready for work. Yeah. Just like you get ready to play a game, you put on your uniform. And so for me, it's very intentional. After I train, come back, get a protein shake, take a shower, get ready. Don't just throw on pajamas, don't just sit down. Like get myself in the mindset through that routine of preparing. And then I attack the priorities. I try to get at least one priority moving or done before I get in my inbox, because I know how dangerous email is. Email is other people's priorities.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of the attack mode. And then on the flip side, at the end of the day, I try to set up the next day to be more successful. I review the day. Did I get my priorities done? If I did, great. What helped me do that? If I didn't, what got in my way? And then what are the 3 priorities I need to get done tomorrow to be successful? So I outline them the night before, because sometimes, hey, maybe you missed your alarm and you're getting up a little bit later, so you got to shift it. If you try to figure out your priorities once the day started, you're more likely going to be in a reactive mode versus an attack mode.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree with everything you just said. And it's true. I mean, everybody's different. Just because you're waking up at 5:15 doesn't mean the CEO of some other company wakes up at 7 and doesn't get the same thing. Some people go to sleep earlier, some people go to sleep later. I think that's a fallacy. And like a lot of people hype themselves up saying, hey, man, I wake up early every day. And it's like, yeah, man, he wakes up at 8 and he's doing more than you. So it depends on how much you do each day.
That is the key. It's not the hours you're awake, what times they are. I mean, I think about it. Healthy night's sleep, you're getting 7-8 hours of sleep, helps keep your energy high, helps you perform better. But let's say it's 8 hours. What are you doing in those other 16? How are you using them? Because my bet is if you're really good, you don't need to go 2 hours of sleep a night, 3 hours of sleep a night grinding, because you're way better at using the 16 you're awake. Whereas a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are working 12, 15-hour work days because they're not using their time well, and they're not getting nearly as much done as somebody that's working a 6-hour work day because they are hyper-focused. They have their system and they're cranking away.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, have you read the book 10-Minute Toughness by any chance?
I have not. I will add it to my list though.
Add it, because it seems like you like sports. NFL's back today. Yep. It's a sports book. He's one of the trainers for the St. Louis Cardinals. Okay. And it's really short, but it goes to he teaches you how he helps his athletes improve their game, and it touches a lot on the little things you just touched about, like being in the right arousal state, getting yourself in the right state, visualizing before doing certain things, journaling at the end of the event, seeing top 3 things you did well, number 1 improvements. How can I improve things? It's treating your life as a business, as if you were an athlete for a professional sports team, and if you treat it that way, chances are you're going to succeed and win in the area you're in.
Yeah. It's funny when a lot of times when we get out of sports and we're done playing, we don't take that same mentality with us. I mean, that's the beauty of sports, is the lessons there, the mentality, it works in life. You prepare. You're going to go do a training session. You don't just jump in and grab weights. You figure out what's the workout today, what's the plan. You warm up accordingly. You get your body ready to do work. Then you get in and do the work. You log the works you do. You take notes. What did I do well? Where did I miss? What I need to do differently next time? You recover afterwards. Same applies to life. We got to know what we're doing. We got to know what our priorities are. We got to attack them like we're attacking a pair of weights in the off-season training. We got to review afterwards, and then we got to recover. Yeah. And once you get into that mode, you become way more productive. Everybody's looking for the quickest hack to make $1 million bucks, or the fastest shortcut. Like, there's no shortcut. Like, the fastest shortcut to gaining muscle. Okay, steroids, cool. Let's end our lives about 10, 15, 20 years earlier, because it's gonna mess us up. Versus the guy who's like, I'm gonna eat well, I'm gonna move right, I'm gonna have a plan, I'm gonna get a coach who can help me in where I'm deficient and where I'm short, and then I'm just going to attack it.
Yeah. And I mean, so one thing that I want to touch up for my audience too, it's like, there's no right age either. It's better late than never, right? You said you started this 11 years ago, so you're around 28, 27. So guys, a lot of you guys are mid-20s, early 20s and are freaking out, graduating out of college, not knowing what to do. Take a deep breath. It'll all work out. You just got to experience life, try different ventures, network with different people, and then things will start picking up. But you do.
You've seen the show The Office?
Yeah.
Okay, so Dwight, and I'm blanking on Dwight's real name, but Rainn Wilson. Rainn was interviewed recently by on Rich Roll's podcast.
Okay.
And he talked about that specifically. He said your 20s should be for just experimenting, adventuring, figuring it out. Don't put yourself in this box that I have to have it all figured out before I turn 30. Like, test stuff. That's what I did. I was testing stuff. I was trying stuff. What works, what doesn't. When you get into 30s, then you start getting a better picture. So if your 20s are about saying yes to opportunities, yes to trying stuff, your 30s, your 40s are about how do I say no? Because the best thing that successful people do is they say no to so many opportunities to get laser focused on what they're good at and what they do well. But in order to get there, you have to say yes. And so everybody, myself included, we all wish we started sooner. Those listening today, if you're 21, 22, I'd love to have started my thing at 21, 22. Give me an extra 6, 7, 8 years runway. But there's so many people I know today. I'm 39 now. So many people I know today that are saying, I'm going to get to it one day. I wish I'd started sooner. And then they never start.
Yeah.
The people that get up and get going and get after it are the ones that everybody else is sitting there watching thinking, man, I wish I'd done that, even though everybody had the opportunity to, and they still don't take advantage of it today.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. This is kind of switching it up a little bit, but why do you think certain people get up after, especially in today's day, get up after it, write goals, have habits, compete every day like yourself, and some don't?
Yeah, I think a couple of reasons. I think some people are too in love with their comfort. I think some people are, actually, I take that back. I think the biggest reason is fear. At the end of the day, fear talks people out of it. Now, it looks different because a lot of us don't think about fear unless we're going into a haunted house, getting on a roller coaster. In a more serious sense, you get a diagnosis from a doctor. But fear is everyday part of life. It's that pit in your stomach when you go to, say you're in your 20s, you go to a networking event, you're the youngest person there, and you feel like, God, I don't belong in this room. Everybody's done so much. It's that imposter syndrome. It's fear of, what if I pass up this party to start working on my goal? What are my friends going to say? And being afraid of that. Or putting something out there online, say, hey, I want to be really good at Instagram lives or TikTok reels. And you start posting stuff and you're worried, A, what other people are going to think, or B, what if this doesn't work out? Fear is the number one reason people settle.
Yeah.
And I know that because it's taught me out of stuff. When I was 18, 19, 20, opportunities I had because I was afraid of, what if I failed? What would other people say? You know, what if all of my goals and everything didn't work out? And that is the biggest thing. Now, the kicker on that is, the bad news is there's no such thing as being fearless. There is not a fearless life. Even the documentary Solo, about the free climber who climbed up the wall in Yosemite without any harnesses, cables, anything. Researchers studied him because they believed his brain didn't process fear the way you and I would.
Yeah.
Like, the brain is always processing fear, sending chemical notes and signals. And they believed that his wouldn't. But what they found, which was so fascinating, is that his brain processes fear just like everybody else. The difference is he's aware of it. So when fear comes in and his palms start sweating and he gets a little worried and his heart rate picks up, he starts to notice it and then put his focus in, where do I need to put my hand next? What's the next thing I need to do? Second thing he's done is he's gotten so many reps at climbing that he's put himself in a position to be afraid before, so he knows what the feeling is and he knows how to work through it. Courage is not being fearless. Courage is taking action while you're afraid. And the one thing a great life, a purposeful life, a great business, getting a goal, all of that requires courage. Yeah. Whether you're the overweight, super out of shape person and you're terrified to go into the gym for the first time because of what other people might think about you if you don't know what you're doing, doesn't matter. Courage is getting your foot in that front door, focusing on, what am I going to do today to take care of me, because I have to live with the results. Courage is pressing record on your phone and posting that first TikTok video, or talking about your business for the first time because you're worried about what other people can say. It's courage that does that. Courage is what allows us to compete. Fear is what robs us of meaningful lives.
It's a great answer, man. That was a great answer, and it hit home because it's true, man. Like, for example, what kept me from starting this podcast was fear. What kept me from starting my personal brand was fear. What kept me from buying my first real estate deal was fear. What if I lose my money? What are people going to think? What are my family going to think? What are they going to think? And I think Dean Graziosi, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he says it best, and he's recently been saying it. It's like, with the situation, the environment, the economy, and everything that's going on, that imposter syndrome is going to pop up even more. Just because everything's negative, everything's fear, anything you want to try out to do now is even harder because everybody's in this negative mindset. And it's time to, like you said, put one foot over the other, one hand over the other, and just focus on that single step process goals rather than the product goal itself.
100%.
Yeah, man. It's something that I feel like as you go on and you live life and you read and you surround yourself with the right people, you start gaining this mindset a little better, and you learn how to handle fear. I think one of the things that helped me handle fear a lot more was breathing. As crazy as it sounds, when I feel fear, when I feel anxious, I sit down, I close my eyes, and I do a breathing exercise I learned. And it slows you down so much, it calms you down. So little things like that work.
It's learning to be where your feet are. For me, it's a matter of breathing. It's a matter of literally wiggling my toes to feel my feet on the ground. And then it's asking myself questions. What am I afraid of? Can I reframe this to look at this situation in a different regard? And people talk about that all the time, because right now a majority of my work is keynote speaking. So I'm on stage in front of hundreds, thousands of people. And public speaking is like the number one fear for most people. The old Jerry Seinfeld joke is that more people at a funeral would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. And everybody asks, like, how do you get over the fear? And I was like, for me, it's controlling your breathing. It's being in that moment, but then it's changing your focus. When you're afraid, all you're thinking about is you. What am I going to look like? What am I going to sound like? What are they going to say? As a speaker, your focus is on them. How am I going to add value to you? How am I going to help you? It's not about me. It's about how I'm going to help you. How can I help you get to where you want to go? And so you reframe that mindset. When you tell yourself you're nervous, you're scared, no, you're just excited. The difference between nervousness and fear in that moment and excitement, it's the same biological reaction. It's how we look at it and how we prepared for it. Yeah, you should be nervous if you didn't prepare to be there. But if you've done the work to prepare for that talk, earn that opportunity, you're excited. And so how you talk about that to yourself changes that. And so everybody listening, you have the opportunity to do great things, because you're at a point in your life that every one of us that are older would love to go back to. Most people are looking at their lives today at 30, 40, 50, 60, saying, man, I wish I'd gone after a goal at 20, and they still won't go after it today. How great of an opportunity you have to go after it today, to learn, to pivot. I changed Compete multiple times to what it is today. People see it now. I do keynote speaking. I got a book. I got a podcast. I have a ton of stuff. I didn't start that way. I started selling t-shirts out of the trunk of my car and said, what works? Keep doing that. What doesn't work? Pivot. And little by little, you start to figure it out. No different than you did on the investing. And hey, I'm going to launch a podcast. Okay, this episode, I like this. I'm going to try this differently. But you got to do the work instead of just keep waiting and thinking that you're going to figure it out some magic time down the future. You don't figure anything out until you get your feet moving.
Boom. I mean, that's like one of those points where you just rewind 30 seconds to a minute and re-listen to that, because it's true. I mean, just think about it. He started off selling apparel from his trunk, and he evolved to what he is now, to podcasts, to keynote speaking. That evolved, but he started and put the work in one area, and then that gave him fruits to the other areas that now, I mean, you're a keynote speaker, you have businesses, and you're a podcaster and all that. That's beautiful, man. Thank you so much for taking the time on coming on the show, man. My guests, my audience are going to love this. They're going to learn a bunch from it. And guys, you need to share this. Everybody needs to know who he is and what he's about, and buy his apparel, compete every day. I mean, what better way to live your life other than competing with yourself every day? Now, Jake, where can my audience find you? What's your website and your social media?
Yeah, super easy. So all of our brand stuff is Compete Every Day. Any social media you find, competeeveryday.com is going to be our website. I personally am most active on Instagram, and you'll find that super easy at Jake Thompson Speaks. So follow Compete Every Day. You'll engage with my team, our brand. And then if you're on Instagram, Jake Thompson Speaks is the best way to connect. And anything we talked about today, man, you have another question, you want some follow-up, shoot me a DM. Tell me you heard about me here on the podcast. Ask me your question. I'll shoot you a voice note, video, comments back, because I want to add some value to where you are and hopefully taking advantage of the opportunity you have today to compete and get better.
Yeah, love that. And guys, this will be on the notes. So click it, follow him. He's a great follow. You'll learn a bunch from him. And hopefully we'll have you soon back in the show for a
Love to.
second episode. All right, man. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
You bet.